It's yet another season for University of Akron men's basketball, and it's a season where it's going to be really hard to follow up the accomplishments of last season. They won the MAC tournament and they won the MAC title. They also got NCAA playoff berth, and there's a lot to really live up to after everything that has happened last season. But that is where we're going to start, is basically the overall topic for this podcast is, can the Zips accomplish what they accomplished last season with many believe is a weaker team? Many people don't think that they're going to be as strong as they were last year, or they might even take a step back in the wrong direction. But that is basically what we are going to answer today on the University of Akron Men's Basketball Podcast. I am Sartaj Aujla, and along with me is Troy Taylor. Troy, how are we doing today?
Oh, excellent, my man.
Okay, good. So let's just go off running and, just quickly go over so far their season so far. They won their exhibition matchup against Bluffton. They won 95-70. They then won their season opener in the regular season with 72-63 over Coastal Carolina. Then began the big road trip for the Zips against St. Mary's at 3 a.m. It was part of the 24 hours of hoop, and they did lose, however, 85-73. But you really gotta know that it was a tough matchup for them. All circumstances were pointing against them. Late tip-off against a team that was in the NCAA tournament last season. And, it didn't help that right after that they traveled to Middle Tennessee. It was a close game. However, they did lose in the end 80-73. And that team was also in the NCAA tournament. And St. Mary's and Middle Tennessee actually faced each other in the first four in the NCAA tournament. So the Zips, so far, the season has been opening off not on a note that they wanted, but right now they're 1-3, and they will not be home until November 27th against Malone, and that's an exhibition matchup, though. So long road trip for the Zips. Troy, what do you think so far about the Zips this season? How do you think they opened up so far, 3 games into the season?
I think 3 games into the season, they opened up about as well as you could have expected them to. I mean, coming out against Coastal Carolina, they lost them in the opener last year, and they really made a statement in the first half. It's just, unfortunately for them, they had a second half to play, and they really let their massive lead slip away as the game went on. And I think that's what really angered Coach Danbra later on in the game, just for the fact that they had such a good lead, and he wanted to play some of his younger players who haven't really gotten an opportunity to play a whole lot yet, exactly. But that's what he said in the press conference. He just wanted to make sure these starters know that they can't let the game slip away so easily when you're facing someone you should definitely beat.
And that's something that he definitely said in his press conference, is that he was kind of disappointed in the lack of really effort in the second half. And he even noted that this is typical of his teams out at the start of the season. The second half is when they really struggle. And, I did some research, and the Zips actually in the second half, they're giving up, their teams that they're facing, they're giving up a worse shooting percentage. I believe Middle Tennessee, they shot 51 from the field, and then the second half, 61 from the field. So, it's a tale, what I think is a tale of second half woes for the Zips. And, in all 3 of these games, Coastal Carolina, they had, like you said, a comfortable lead. And unfortunately, they couldn't really ride that lead all the way into. Now, granted, they never gave up the lead, but there were a lot of times when the Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina could have easily came back into the game. But luckily, the Zips were able to stop them in their tracks whenever that did happen. And with St. Mary's and Middle Tennessee, it was both of them on paper. It might not look like a close matchup, but if you watch the game, see everything that Akron was giving them trouble. And one player that I really wanted to talk about is Quincy Diggs, someone who came off of missing all of last year, comes back, and so far has made a phenomenal impact on this team. A lot of people talk about Demetrius Treadwell being the big player of the year for the Zips, and granted he will be, but Quincy Diggs has kind of kind of came into the spotlight out of nowhere when we were expecting him to not really make an impact immediately coming right out of the gate.
Exactly, and everyone was predicting Demetrius to be the MAC Player of the Year, to have Zeke Marshall and then Demetrius Treadwell be consecutive Akron MAC Players of the Year. But I think Quincy Diggs has entered that conversation right now just for the fact that he's come back after his suspension and has played phenomenally on both sides of the ball. He's shooting down threes, and then he's getting steals on defense, which turned into more points for the team.
And, one thing when I watched that Coastal Carolina game and even the St. Mary's and the Middle Tennessee game, Quincy Diggs is really active on the court. He is everywhere on the court. He's, if the Zips do give up, if the opponent they're facing, if they do get a steal on the Zips offense, he's chasing down that defender. And most of the time, he's actually getting them blocking their shot or at least giving them contention to the rim. And that's something that's really, really good for the Zips, is that they need that type of player. After Alex Abreu, unfortunately, is no longer with the team, they needed some player to really come in and be that fast break guy that can really spark an offense. And, from watching the team, I can sort of see Quincy Diggs kind of forming into that role of getting all other players involved, because he's opening up players. Like, everyone's trying to concentrate on him now, and other players are wide open. You've seen those assists. You've seen those flashes of him getting his teammates involved when he was driving to the rim. I remember, I believe it was against Middle Tennessee. He was driving to the rim, and it left Jake Kretzer wide open at the corner, and he immediately passed the ball to him, and that was an easy three. And, that's something that I believe could be a very big impact for the Zips. And we didn't even expect him to really, like I said, we didn't expect him to come out of the gate like this.
No, absolutely not. And he's really made a statement for what he wants to accomplish this year. He's showing now that he's more of a team player coming back from his suspension. I remember watching him before his suspension. It was all about him scoring, but now he's getting to that role where he can spread the ball around to everyone on the court, whether it be Jake Kretzer or Reggie McAdams or even some of the other guys like Treadwell or Nick Harney. He is making a statement that it's the team first, and then his priorities will come second. And I think that's what will lead him out to be the MAC Player of the Year this year.
Exactly. And, like we just mentioned also before, is Demetrius Treadwell. He's also been making an impact so far, especially on the defensive end. He's contesting shots, and he's the same thing. He's getting. I think you can say everyone on this team is working as a team, and that's something that is really hard for a basketball organization to do. Is really instill that teamwork first mentality and not one superstar mentality. And that's something that I think is very successful so far for the Zips, is that they're having all these players work together as a team. Now, of course, we would want a better record right now. Right now, like I said, they're 1-2, but coming off a really tough road games against St. Mary's and Middle Tennessee. But overall, the teams at a position, and it's also good to remind that last season they also started like this. They were also 1-2 in the first 3 games of the season, and many people were, you could say, casting a doubt on the team. But then you saw their win streak that they went on, the dominance that they showed, and that's something that I believe the Zips can do this year, but in a totally different way, of course. But the Zips are not a team. Like I said at the opening of the show, they're not a team that is just going to back down. I know Keith Dan brought all his players, Nick Harney, Demetrius Treadwell, Carmelo Betancourt, Quincy Diggs, Jake Kretzer, Pat Forsyth. I can go on and on. They all know these people, all these national people are telling them, you're not going to be as good as last year. If you lose Zeke Marshall, how can you even expect? You lost your best defensive anchor in Zeke Marshall. You lost your field general in Alex Abreu. How can you even hope to, make an impact? And, they know this, and they're out to prove that they're going to overcome all obstacles, and they're going to make the same impact they did last season.
And they really are. And when you look at it, Demetrius Treadwell, he led the team in rebounds last year, and I feel he can do the exact same thing this year, just for the fact he is so physical on offense and defense when it comes to getting rebounds. No one wants to contest with him. And then when you have a guy in Pat Forsyth who's just a sophomore trying to groom himself into taking the position of Zeke Marshall, I believe that in time he's not going to have the same scoring opportunities, but defensively he is definitely going to be one of the main stars to watch on this team.
And we've seen those flashes, especially against the opener against Coastal Carolina. We've seen him block shots and really contest and really even pierce through the defense. He didn't score as much, but when he did score, he was piercing through the Chanticleer's defense and really coming up with easy buckets and making his defensive presence known. And, something that I wanted to bring up is that, through 3 games, they are out-rebounding their opponents 105-94. They're stealing the ball more, 32-21. So that's a whole 11 more steals in their opposing teams. And these are and I'm counting the first 3 games of the season. That's Coastal Carolina, St. Mary's, and Middle Tennessee. They have 8 blocks also. And, this just shows that, this defense, I mean, sure, you can say that they're not going to be as good as they were last year, but I think they're still going to be close. And it might take a while to really mesh with the team missing Zeke Marshall on the court. But we've seen Pat Forsyth. We've seen Quincy Diggs. We've seen, Isaiah Johnson's also going to be a big player. They're going to really fill in that void. And Demetrius Treadwell, too. I haven't even mentioned Demetrius Treadwell. I named 3 players first. And, that's something that I believe the Zips, once they really get going and know how to play without Zeke Marshall on the floor, which I think they're getting really fast, then this team is going to, be hot again as the season goes on.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited for. You talked about it earlier. The first half of last season, they were kind of slow start, kind of didn't really hit their stride. But once they hit MAC play starting towards January, that is when you are going to see the true potential of this team. When they know they have to beat opponents in their division, in their conference, they know that is their time to step up. And they definitely have some vendettas against some team from last year. I know Buffalo, for one, was the one who ended their win streak late in the year, and then they lost their season ender to Kent State in the regular season. So I just feel that's a better way to go for it.
And, when MAC play does really come down, that's going to be a very important time for the Zips. We've always talked about it no matter what. Even in professional level, high school, and college, you have to win in your conference. If you win your conference, you're going to be pretty good. And we've seen the Zips, that huge winning streak that they went on, how good they were, and they rode that momentum all the way to the MAC championship. Now they did like you said, their streak did end when they faced Buffalo, and they did end the season on a sour note against Kent State, but came right back against Kent State in the MAC tournament and beat them, then beat Ohio to win the MAC title.
And you got to remember, that was right after the whole Alex Abreu situation with their season ender going down the way it did. And I feel like if they weren't already preoccupied with this game, there's no that they would have closed the season on a high note and rode that into the MAC tournament and made an even more impressive performance than they already did. So I just feel like if they can keep this year confident without any other side distractions or any off-the-field issues distracting this team, they can really make a presence in the MAC like they did last season.
Exactly. And, if we were to look at last season, they opened up, like we said, they didn't really open up the season on a strong note last season against Coastal Carolina, who they opened up the season this season. They lost in overtime. They won against John Carroll, and then they participated in the tournament against Oklahoma State down in Puerto Rico. And they started the season 1-3, but they came right back, won 3 in a row, and then they lost 2, but then they went on that winning streak. So that's something that the Zips can definitely do. And one of the things that I think we keep on forgetting is that Keith Dambrot is the coach of this team. And we've seen through adversity, he knows how to coach his players to really overcome all odds. And that's something that I think, it's constantly being overshadowed. Yes, we lost Zeke Marshall. Yes, we lost Alex Abreu. But still, we still have Keith Dambrot, who's known to make players better than they even expected. And maybe even better than he expected, too. I mean, he even said himself that when during a basketball media day, when he was looking at Nick Harney and also Quincy Diggs, he knew that these players can be good. And once they knew that they can be good, look how they performed on the court. And, this is a talent evaluator, a good coach like Keith Dambrot is definitely a huge part on this team.
Exactly, and that is what the true value I see of a Keith Dambrot as a coach. He knows how to bring the best out in his players. And that's the important thing is because as long as he's been in Akron, they've been successful. They make the MAC tournament every year, make it down to the finals nearly every year, and it's always a thing with him. It's like he said in his media day, they really don't change anything. Just players leave, and then they swap out the jerseys and bring new players. It's really all the simple that it is with him. With guys like Isaiah Johnson, you want to expect big things from these guys, and I think once they get the system under about a year under their belt, they'll really be able to shine and show that they can be a real factor in this team.
Exactly. And, just quickly looking at their upcoming schedule, like I did mention, they do face Malone, but it is an exhibition game. Wednesday, November 27th at James A. Rhodes Arena. They will return home after 15 days since St. Mary's. They return to James A. Rhodes Arena. And then after that, they go back into regular season play against Cleveland State, which is going to be a big team this season. And that's going to be a big matchup for the Akron Zips. And, there's some comparisons you can also do with Cleveland State. They lost a lot of their starters. They lost 4 starters. Only one of them returned. But they do have a lot of talent. And, it's sort of equivalent to the Akron Zips losing 3 big starters in Brian Walsh, who is, by the way, is a graduate assistant with the team still, and Zeke Marshall and Alex Abreu. So both teams are really, you could really compare that they've lost enough firepower, but Cleveland State still has talented people. They have a lot of freshmen and sophomores who are going to return and make a big impact. And it's the same thing if you look at Akron. They have Quincy Diggs who make a big impact. Nick Harney is going to take a bigger role. Demetrius Treadwell is still there. And you still got Jay Kretzer, Reggie McAdams. You got so many people on this team who are ready to step up. And we've seen flashes on this team so far that they're ready to step up and fill in what Abreu brought, fill in what Zeke Marshall brought, and fill in what Brian Walsh brought.
Yeah, and that's the big thing for me is, can Carmelo Betancourt be at Alex Abreu's level in the near future? Because that's what made this offense to me. It was to have a consistent point guard to be able to spread around, to throw it to Zeke or throw it to Demetrius Treadwell or Quincy Diggs. You need that sort of presence on this team in order to be successful and in order to score points and accomplish what Dambrot wants to accomplish.
And that's something that's a big, big question for this team, is if Carmelo Betancourt can really, really step up and fill in the void that was created by Alex Abreu and leaving. And, something that I've noticed is that, in the MAC tournament, Carmelo Betancourt actually did a pretty good job filling in. He didn't have the numbers, but he still was able to get in there, get his players into position. And it's another thing with a lot of people look at the numbers and say, like, if they don't have high numbers, they're not doing good. That's not the case.
No.
If a point guard is supposed to be the field general of the team, get players in position, or signal the plays, have all the offense flowing. And I think Carmelo Betancourt did that on such a short notice in the MAC tournament, and look what happened. We won the MAC tournament.
Exactly. And it wasn't necessarily all about points for Carmelo or any point guard position in our offense. It's all about being, like you said, a field general. It's about spreading the ball around, making sure that you're essentially the last line that the ball is not going to get stolen. You're controlling the ball, controlling the clock, and if you have a shot, take it. And I think Carmelo definitely has the ability to shoot and steal on defense, and I think in the future, and if not by MAC play, he should definitely be on that level.
And, another thing is that he will have help at the point guard position with Niles Evans, who is going to come in. And I've seen him play when he played against Middle Tennessee, and he actually did pretty good. He moved the ball well. He shot well. And, that's someone that Keith Dambrot even said himself that could be a very good player if given time. And, this could, like I said, this team, it's talented, but not many people really get that. They really need to look at the roster itself and see what everyone's performing. And not even to mention that Keith Dambrot did mention that he would play he's thinking about putting Quincy Diggs at the 1, and we've seen him play at the 1, and he moves the ball well, he cuts through the defense well, gets everyone in position well. And this team is loaded. It really is.
And that's been the big thing with Quincy Diggs, is that how coaches have been saying that he's faster now since he's come back, and that's essential if you're going to be a point guard at this level, and especially in this conference. I feel like how you said earlier with the game that they have, they're amazing three-point shooters. Like Quincy Diggs, amazing three-point shooter. Nick Harney can shoot the three. Jake Kretzer and Reggie McAdams, both excellent three-point shooters. And I think if you can have that kind of consistency from the offensive game, you can definitely score a lot of points and definitely break the will of defenses in this conference.
Exactly. And, if we look at other players on this roster, Reggie McAdams is someone that we saw, especially in the season opener against Coastal Carolina. He was knocking down threes a lot, along with Jake Kretzer. DJ Bataille, unfortunately, is gone, but we have a lot of players to really fill in for these players. And, that's something, like I said, not many people are really paying attention to who we have on the roster. And, of course, right now, some of them, they still need to realize their potential. But once they get there, it'll be like Zeke Marshall or Alex Abreu or Brian Walsh never left. And that's something that, Keith Dambrot, I know he knows that he has a talented roster. It's just a matter of getting them up to speed and getting them where they want to be.
Exactly, and that's what's always amazed me about Keith Dambrot's team is the depth they have on their bench. When one guy comes off, they bring in someone else, and they're just as productive, if not more, in some areas of another. Some might be a better defender, some might be better at shooting the basket, but one way or another, they're building talent, and they have a great consistency of what needs to be accomplished in this offense and what needs to be accomplished overall to get the goals done for what they want done.
Yeah, and, if we were to look at what they need to do now to improve themselves for the rest of this season, we're still a little bit away from MAC play, but every game still counts for the Zips. And, something that I've mentioned early on in the show is that their second-half defense really needs to step up. We see that sometimes they get comfortable with the lead, and they really, I'm not saying they go back on their defense. It's just that they really need to bring consistency on the defensive end. And I mentioned against Middle Tennessee shot a good 51% from the field in the first half. The second half should be lower, but it went up by 61%. And it's the same with St. Mary's and Coastal Carolina, is that they didn't really shoot well in the first half, but in the second half they shot really well. And that's something that the Zips really need to bear down on and see if they can improve their second half defense. What other things do you think they need to improve upon, or something they need to keep going in order to keep the momentum going?
Yeah, they need to. I feel like you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, just to keep their egos out of it at the end of the first half when they're leading, they need to stay in these games in order to be successful. And also on the offensive side, they really need to cut down on foul trouble, because we even noticed that in the Coastal Carolina game, they were matching Coastal Carolina foul for foul when it was really unnecessary to. So I think they need to play smarter offensively and defensively, cut down on fouls and turnovers, and we should see the same production and same level of play that we saw from them last season.
And, just a quick look before we get off and running here is their next matchup is an exhibition matchup against Malone, November 27th. Then they have Cleveland State, Bethune-Cookman, Oral Roberts, Detroit. Then they're in the Diamond Head Classic again in Hawaii against Oregon, or and if they win, either face George Mason or Iowa State. Then they travel to South Carolina, Coppin State, Marshall, Ball State, Ohio, Miami, Toledo, Eastern Michigan. I think you get what I'm trying to get out here is that the rest of their season is going to be really tough for them, and it's something that I think they do understand, and it's something that they can really get their mindset to and win some of these games, because some of these games, and like we said, like a lot of people say that Akron's stepped back. A lot of other teams have really lost a lot of their players. If we mention Ohio, DJ Cooper's no longer there. Yeah. And, so many players have been lost in these other teams, and that's something that also needs to be in consideration when you think about the MAC conference in general. Yeah,
that's really something you got to consider when you get right down to it, is the losses that other teams in the MAC have had. I mean, DJ Cooper, what he accomplished for that Ohio Bobcat team was ridiculous. And for that to not even to be consideration with other MAC schools and just focus on Akron is kind of ridiculous.
Exactly. And, it's going to be interesting to see the season, but I think Akron's going to be able to really prove themselves that they didn't step back. In fact, they're going to take a step forward.
Exactly.
And that's all the time we have, unfortunately, for this edition of University of Akron Men's Basketball Podcast. Be sure to keep listening. We're going to keep posting more podcasts, so keep an eye out on that. As always, I'm Sartaj Aujla for Troy Taylor. Have a great day, everyone.